Hi everyone, I'm going to be reading chapter 13 part 2 today of Secrets of a Sun King, so let's get started. We're meant to be overwhelming, then, but instead, they're strangers make us stare. The men are fair-haired, squat, ugly. Their horses look like the same, but with kinder eyes. Before they even dismount, Horemheb and his advisors appear on the palace steps, carrying swords. More of our men gather behind them, blocking the entrance to the palace. All are heavily armed. With a shudder, I think of Kaiki's dream and who this show of swords and daggers is really for. Mother, like the others watching, is confused. Why aren't they letting them in? Did we not invite them here to make peace? I don't need to tell her. Word soon reaches us that the king is missing. He isn't here to receive his guests. The visitors are sent away, as confused as the townspeople, only with sore tempers. From the palace I hear shouting and the crashing of things being thrown across the room. As Mother and I went back into our chores, I pray that Maya and Kaiki will stay away as long as they can. Mid-morning, we're drawn from our work by a sudden darkening of the skies. The sandstorm is upon us in moments. Mother and I rushed to bring pots, carpets, chickens inside, as gusts of winds tear through the courtyard. Along with the central street, palm trees flail like horsewhips. Once the shutters are closed at all the windows, Mother lights a lamp. It's a bad omen, she says, shaking her head. Things have not gone well today. I'm nervous too, as we wait out the storm, listening to the wind and the sand pelting our walls like a million tiny stones. My only hope is that Maya and Kaiki have found shelter. The storm, though fierce, blows over quickly. I'm anxious to know what's happening at the palace, so I'm glad to open the shutters again and have an excuse to be outside. Everything is coated in desert dust. There are drifts of it at our door, our gate. Servants are already clearing the palace steps, shaking our carpets and brushing down seats. Then one of them stops to stare into the distance. He points, says Maya's name. I rush to the gate. They're back too early. The storm must have driven them home again. Yet the moment I catch sight of them, it's clear something else is wrong. Maya is carrying Kaiki over his shoulder, his head and arms lolling down my brother's back. He rushes into the palace without a word. Fear makes me follow him inside. I find Maya in the main hall, surrounded by men with swords. They won't let him pass. What's happening? I cry. Let my brother inside at once. Eyes orders, one of the men said. We're not allowed to let anyone go behind this point. But you can see he's carrying the king. He's unwell. He needs tending. Maya tries to quieten me. The noise brings I out into the hall, where he observes the scene with dead on a platter fish eyes. My godson has returned, I see, he says, but when he realizes Kaiki's condition, there is no disguising his shock. Is he dying? Maya interrupted. Yes, this time I believe he is. We make Kaiki as comfortable as we can. Medicines are sent for, bowls of cool water brought, and I don't think either will do much good. The bite on his face, the wound on his leg, both are red and blistering. I remember him last night rubbing his head, shivering. He was falling ill even then. What happened? I asked Maya. My brother tells me how they travel only a little way when Kaiki asked to stop. The sweat running off him like rivers. He collapsed to the ground, closed his eyes. He didn't get up again. No fruit was thrown, no rodent hunted. We'd already taken shelter when the sandstorm hit, he explains. All day, Maya and I sit with Kaiki. We try not to cry, try instead to count his slowing breaths and be thankful that he's been in our lives. When evening comes, as we light lamps and burn incense to cleanse the air, Kaiki's breathing changes. His eyelids flutter. He opens his eyes. I'm astounded. He's recovered. He's survived. When I look at Maya, he is laughing laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you staying in this life after all?" he asks. Kaiki gives a tiny shake of his head. "No, but I don't want to leave you both. I'm scared." "The afterlife would be wonderful," I tell him. "Full of all the riches you could wish for." "Riches haven't brought me happiness, Kaiki says. "All I want is to be with my friends." "Then don't die," Maya insists, holding tightly on to Kaiki's hand. "What will I be without you? Who will I throw the pomegranates at?" "I can think of a few possibilities," Kaiki says, smiling. He closes his eyes, then a long, sighing breath leaves his chest. I sit silent, waiting for more, but no others follow. It's me who cries now. Maya gently slips his hand from Kaiki's. "Safe journey, my friend," he says. "I promise you this isn't the end, but a brilliant new beginning." The ritual starts the next morning, though sadness lies thick as smoke over the town. Kaiki's body must be prepared for its glorious final journey, and it's a long, detailed task that will involve many. So often in Kaiki's short life, we've come close to this moment. Fevers, accidents, a new limb, a different pain. It's hard to believe his time has finally come. It helps us to be busy. Maya takes a bigger team of workmen back to the tomb site in the valley. They must carve rooms from the rock face, paint them, fill them with all the treasures our king needs for his new life. It's work that would normally take years, yet now it has to be finished in just 70 days. At the palace, Mother and I are summoned to wash the body. Poor Kaiki is a small, wasted figure, his arms and legs thinner than mine. With its old insect bites and new wounds, his skin looks like a battlefield. "He's still warm," Mother comments as we wash and shave his scalp. "It's the fever," I tell her. My hands, though, start shaking as I realise my terrible mistake. My grandfather would never have made this error. He'd have listened to Kaiki's dream, weighing it in his hands, and he'd have noticed the telltale signs of a fever. His dream was confusing, bewildering, but it wasn't an omen, not a strong one. It was mostly nonsense, as fever dreams are. My grandfather would have told Kaiki to go home and take to his bed and rest. No doubt he would have advised an armed guard or two at his bedchamber door, but he'd never have sent him out into the desert where he thought he'd be safe, when he was hardly well enough to stand. The mistake is mine. I am broken. Other mistakes quickly follow. The tomb is in a difficult place. Fault lines in the rock mean it's dangerous to cut deeper into the hillside. Special equipment is needed, more plans, more workers. Otherwise, the whole mountainside will collapse. A tells Maya to choose another spot, but it has to be here, in this exact place, Maya insisted. "I've measured the sun." A tells him there's no time for such details. Burial rules state our pharaoh's tomb must be ready in 70 days. So it's no surprise when A takes over the plans. He chooses a new site at the base of the rock face. It's a shadowy, unlikely place for a royal tomb. Maya is furious. This alternative is a very poor second best. My brother wants to grab A by the throat and shake him. It takes all Mother's soothing to calm him down. The preparations continue all day and into the next. Early in the morning, A corners me as I cross the courtyard. He reminds me of my duty as a scribe. "These are important times, Lysandra," he says. "I'm relying on you to keep an account of all that is happening as we move from one king to the next." "This last," he says, with a proud tilt of his chin. I'm only glad Maya isn't here to see it. Though my guilt over Kaiki's death is strong, I hide it deeply. I find comfort in being busy, being involved. A priest is called to lead the embalming. I'm relieved it's his knife that cuts into Kaiki's belly. We take the liver, lungs, stomach, intestine that he passes us. Their faint, meaty smell makes me think of a butchered animal. This is no longer the Kaiki I knew, which makes it a little easier. Mother and I, with a couple of healing ladies, pack each organ in salt for drying. The same is done with the gaping hole in Kaiki's torso. All that remains inside is his heart. The priest is quick but careful. Inserting his hook up Kaiki's nose, he teases out a grey shape with the look of fish gills. The brain is near complete, enough for Mother to scoop it up in her hands and place it in a basket on the floor. Later we will burn it. Brains have no place in the afterlife. 40 days pass, 40 soft spring days in which, as the grass plumps and the fruit trees bud, Kaiki's body shrinks away. A becomes our new pharaoh. This is no surprise either. Even Horemheb, who's always had the look of a leader in waiting, makes little fuss. It's Maya who concerns me. His anger is like a flame waiting to catch. Though I confess my mistake about Kaiki's final dream, he refuses to think differently of A. That man has ice where his heart should be, he says. The tomb building is not going well either. The workmen A has hired are lazy and unskilled, their chisels making a mess of the walls that even last-minute plastering cannot disguise. The rooms are small. There are fewer than befit a royal tomb. When the sarcophagus is lowered in, ropes snap. A man's leg is crushed. The chamber that has been recently dug out is now full of rubble again, which only adds to the work. Night after night, Maya comes home cursing. At the end of the 40 days, we are ready to bind the body. At the palace, Mother and I take the organs from their salt, unwrapping each of them in linen strips and packing them into the canopic jars. When we uncover the body, something is amiss. The priest's knife wound has reopened. It's red and fresh. I'm startled. Mother tuts, says these things happen and not to make a fuss. We'll seal the wound with wax. But Kaiki's left arm has also moved. Though we folded it across his body, it now lies at his side. The centre of his chest looks sunken. When I touch it, it feels hollow because there's nothing underneath. Mother, I whisper in shock. His heart isn't here. She tuts again, reaching over the body to check it herself. It's not business of ours, Lysandra, is all she says. Stop poking and pressing. We've got work to do. But when she thinks I'm not looking, she takes an amulet, a small one shaped like the sun, and puts it in the place where his heart should be. We wash the body, then rub it with the scented oil. The eyelids and the nostrils are plugged with resin-soaked fabric. All the time I'm thinking about Kaiki's heart. Both Mother and I know it's not normal to remove it. A person needs their heart to live on in the afterlife. It's the centre of their being, what makes them who they are. We put sawdust into his empty torso to give it shape. Then, just as Mother said, we seal the wound with wax. With prayers recited and incense burned, this alone is a whole day's work. Even by the end of it, I'm still troubled by the missing heart. Someone close to the king has been meddling, taking what isn't theirs. The next day we begin to wrap the body. We use linen strips around each finger, each toe. Occasionally between layers we stop to say a prayer to Amun or Osiris, or to tuck a lucky amulet between the folds to help Kaiki on his journey. The process is meticulous. It takes days and days, 15 in total. By the end of it, our backs are ready to break. Yet Kaiki's form is strong and robust, far more than it ever was in his life. With the tomb as ready as it can be, the burial takes place. It's a bright windy day as we walk the path down into the valley, the sounds of weeping women echoing off the rocks. 70 days have passed, yet my guilt still hurts, and I miss our dear friend like a part of our family has gone. I'm no wiser about the whereabouts of his heart either. All through the ceremony, my brother is sullen, silent. The opening of the mouth ritual is performed by A himself. As he touches the place where Kaiki's mouth is, I glanced at Maya. My brother stays quiet. The air all around us is thick with things unsaid. The first and second coffins are glorious and gold. Maybe our A has done his grandson proud after all. Yet when the final lid is lowered onto the sarcophagus, it's clear it won't fit. There's an awkward, embarrassed pause. A starts blithering and blaming others. Maya thumps a wall, then storms out. I'm scared they'll go after him, but no one does. They're too concerned with the lid. The workman is called. The outer coffin's feet are too big. Hack them off, A says bluntly. The workman does as he's told, grunting over his saw until a pair of feet land on the floor with a clumsy thud. It makes me wince. The mistake is then hastily covered with stinking resin. It's an ugly business, hardly befitting a dog. Never mind a pharaoh. In the tomb itself, the walls are covered with pictures, so crude and rushed, the paint is still wet. The ceremony continues. How jarring it is to be asking the gods to guide our pharaoh when a pair of feet sit before us on the ground. Finally, the prayer's over. We file outside. I'm glad to be back in the sun. Next, the tomb is filled with random objects, chariot wheels, baskets of linen, walking sticks, trumpets, fruit platter, oil jars, flowers tied in bunches. There are shabtis to guard the doors, swords, trunks. Apart from the sticks, I can't imagine Kaiki needing any of this in the afterlife. None of it looks like items he once owned or was attached to. I'm wondering if A has simply cleared out an old back room at the palace and dumped its contents here. High above us on the mountainside, a white-clad figure catches my eye. Someone is up there, scrambling over the rocks. They're heading for the half-dug hole where Kaiki was meant to lie. My mouth grows dry. It's Maya. I'm terrified he's going to jump or throw stones down on us in anger. He does neither. He disappears into the mountains. It's then, like a lock unclicking, that I know what has happened to Kaiki's heart. My brother has taken it. Without it, our pharaoh is not complete, which means his journey to the afterlife won't be possible. And this is Maya's plan. He knows how Kaiki longed to be an ordinary boy. The day he was made king was the unhappiest of his short life. That's what he told Maya. His true joy was his friendships, not in the bitter wrangling of his own family, whose only interest in him was to further their own needs. To continue as a pharaoh in the afterlife would be torture for Kaiki, not a reward. Perhaps this way, with his heart hidden inside the mountain, our dear friend would find some peace at last. Wiping tears, I glanced at A. Fearful he's noticed what's happening above us, but he's still watching over the burial. Swimming in his own glory, he thinks he's done well today, shown respect for the godson who in life he treated infernally. He will never read my account of Tutankhamun's last days. When he asks to see it, I'll lie and say it fell into the fire. Meanwhile, if Maya's calculations are correct, then on one treasured winter day, each day the sun will align with Kaiki's mountain resting place. I look at my brother, so thin, so awkward, and these days far too serious, and think of a saying Kaiki's beloved grandmother used to use. The nut doesn't reveal the tree it contains. What is it? I think. It is a saying about happiness. A nut that looks so dead and dry, given time will grow into something lush, green and beautiful. Rest assured, I won't be burning my account in any fire. I'll bury it in the same quiet place where Maya had laid our dearest friend to rest. Then when my time comes, and Maya's too, we'll join him, and we'll be in the afterlife all together.